what is cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? I am so sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties. It's always a story, okay? And part of that story is it's always never my fault, you know? So,
And the same goes today, guys. Technology is so inconsistent.
yeah,
It
it
is what it
is what
is,
it
but
is.
we're here.
And we are here. So, Grace, what is up? It's been 2 weeks now since everybody has seen you, you know. Oh, that reminds me. Let me go ahead and get that pic from the whatchamacallit. Say what's up to everybody.
What's up, everybody? It's so nice seeing you guys. If you missed our episode last week, you wouldn't know. I guess I should say, if you watched our episode last week, you would know that I wasn't there. I was busy getting stabbed multiple times. I got a new piece, and I actually got a new piece on Monday as well. So I have two new tattoos to show you guys. Story time though, I messaged Chill like midweek last week and was like, I made a mistake. Because I didn't know, and all of you people who have tattoos, especially very well done like portraits, will know. But I didn't know it took like four
Hmm.
to 8 hours to get a portrait done. I thought I scheduled this appointment responsibly with more than enough time for any like delays, etc. The tattoo place wasn't like significantly far from my home, so I was like, I'm safe. And then it was brought to my attention that these are very
Hmm.
lengthy tattoos as I learned very intimately on Friday. So, but I did watch the episode that we had last week. It was
Thank you,
amazing,
thank you,
held
thank
it
you. I
down
try, I try.
beautifully. I, yes, I laughed so hard though in my like, what would you call it?
Memoriam. Yeah,
Is it an obituary?
I think
I
it's
don't
like a
know. Is it an,
memoriam.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, yes. It was beautifully done. So I had Chill make sure he had a picture of what I got done. I don't know
Wait,
if
hold
it's up.
on. I'm sorry. I'm everywhere, but I'm about to put it up right now. Here, boom. Here it is. It's,
Cool,
it's,
cool, cool,
it's right
cool.
here, front and
Boom.
center for everybody to see. Can you explain what this portrait is?
This is the bride from The Bride of Frankenstein. I've been wanting this for a while, and I waited like a month just to hear back to schedule with the artist I've been really wanting to do this with. I think, I mean, without any tattoo, but specifically, I feel like for portraits, it's very important that you go to someone that you trust, that has a lot of years on their hands, and the artist I went to is just absolutely amazing. It took about two movies and two episodes of Friends to get this thing on. I think I did pretty well. Other people might have different recollections, but I think I
Okay.
handled it pretty okay. So my
Okay.
Friday was
So that
fun.
was piece number one.
That was piece number one. And then piece number two I got on Monday, and that is really it's a new addition to my arm. It's a Spider-Man Band-Aid. I've been
Wow.
wanting this for so long. She's actually kind of I'm doing this far away because she's kind of like starting to
Right.
peel as tattoos do. But now I have this like little complete
Well, when it's
weirdness
done,
going on
when it's done peeling, send an image over, and we will officially post it up next Friday.
just for you guys. You're welcome. An insight into my world. How are you doing, Chill?
I am good. I honestly, um, when I did it last week, the show solo, I don't know. It wasn't nerves, but I just felt like I was rambling. But I feel like I did a decent job breaking down episodes one and two of the DMZ.
Can I just say something? I feel like I've never more easily pulled clips from an episode because I feel like your thoughts were so cohesive because you didn't have someone
Mm,
interrupting you. This was like me watching the show and I was like, oh, reflections. But anyway, I think you did
thank you,
amazing. I maybe
thank you,
it
thank you.
felt like you were rambling because I often interrupt. I don't know. That's for you all at home to decide. But it was great. It was awesome. But I'm happy to be back with you guys. Before we hopped on live, because obviously we had a couple of
Mm-hmm.
technical difficulties, I had asked Trill if he'd seen the movie
Mm-hmm.
Midsommar. Obviously not comic book related, but we can call it comic book related because
Oh,
what's
I
her
can't
name?
even
The
tell you.
actress
I don't even know who's in it.
She's
Is she?
Yelena Belova. Anyways, the actress, yes, the actress that plays Yelena Belova is the main character in Midsommar. Like you explained the cover beautifully because that actress crying with like the flowers, and I think it's funny that you described the cover
I did
or
not
the
realize it was
poster
her.
and didn't even know it was
Wow,
her.
looking, boom, there it is. That's her.
Yes. What's her name? Something Poof?
Florence, Puh, Puh.
Florence.
It looks French.
We
Yep.
got it, Florence. But it's because we needed like a nice deep breath before we hopped on with all these little technical difficulties. And I was like, "Have you seen the movie?" And then I was like, because they do this like weird breath thing. I'm just excited to be
And I
back, guys. Let's
think
hop into it.
we're gonna dive right in to continuing DMZ, just because that's where I ended, and we're gonna pick up where I left off. But before we even get into episodes 3 and 4, Grace, why don't you kind of give us like uh let's say how you felt about episodes 1 and 2, like real brief if you could.
Yes. So I feel like the concept is really exciting because I think this genre of movies was super popular like a couple years back with I think Hunger Games and Divergent and other films that were along very similar, post-apocalyptic type world. In this case, it's, we're looking at DMZ, right? A demilitarized zone post a civil war, but it has a very similar, like,
Mm-hmm.
apocalyptic type feel, right? I think you made the observation of it looking very similar to, say, I Am Legend, right? Like, there was a clip that you picked out, and I totally agree. So it was kind of nostalgic falling into this type of storytelling, and it was really easy for me to enjoy it from the jump. I think whenever you have this kind of genre for movies, you just have to learn. I always want to say like the rules. You learn the rules, the dynamics that this world exists in, and I don't know if you have the same difficulty, but it was difficult for me to line them out as clearly. Like I just finished episode 4 a couple days ago, um, and or I finished episode 4 and I was still like, I don't know the dissections of like the
I
factions and things like that. So I feel like I have a
Yeah.
critique maybe in that arena potentially, but the story I really enjoy so far. Um, and just to kind of get into more detail with like my feelings on episodes 1 and 2, Alma, right, like the main character, played by what's her name,
Dawson.
Rosario
Mm-hmm.
Dawson. Love that actress. Um, she's on the search of finding her son, right? Which I think is a very easy story to kind of fall into because I feel like we have a lot of empathy for her in the beginning, and then we expect her to, be having this like moment with her son of like being reunited, or having this like hashtag
Mm-hmm.
heartstrings moment, and it is way, way the opposite of what that is. So that I think for me was very shocking to play with and see how angry her son is and his perspective of what's
Can I
happened in the 8 years.
can I interject just for a second? Just because you
Do it.
bringing the
Yes.
hashtag heartstrings up, I'm not gonna lie. Episode 4, end of episode 4, they came, and we'll get to it. But the hashtag
Yeah,
heartstrings,
we'll
they
get to
definitely
it.
came. I'm not gonna lie.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. But I feel like when you're getting set up with the story, I think we have that expectation, like, oh, when they reunite, it's gonna be this cute little moment of like, just hashtag heartstrings. Like, what else can we say? And to have that moment where
Skell.
Skell, how do you say it?
Yeah.
Skell. Okay. I can pronounce it if I'm watching the show, but then if I try to spell it in my head, it ruins me. But Chris, I'm just gonna say Chris because that's his like original name. When he sees his mom again, it's like fire. He is so, and I wouldn't even say, because he says it himself, like, I'm not angry with you. I feel absolutely nothing. And I think that's worse in some ways because the opposite of love isn't necessarily anger, it's
Mm-hmm.
apathy, right? Like, just nothing. And for a mother to hear that, whoa, like that moment was jarring. It was crazy to see. So definitely by the end of episode 2, I was just like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to see more, which I think is a pretty good sign of
Right.
a decent
Right.
show. And I think I'm just really excited to hop into these next two episodes and as we kind of break down how the story
Okay,
continues.
so I kind of want to backtrack to something that you said earlier as far as the division goes, because it wasn't until episode 4 to where I got a better understanding of the state
Mm-hmm.
of where this country is. Of course, we have the quote unquote United States of America, and I think this border is kind of like ends at a certain point in New York, and then there's Manhattan, and then above
Yeah.
that part is the FSA, which stands for the Free States of America. So there's the United States, and then there's the Free States. Now, it didn't really click with me until episode 4, but it made much more sense as far as the debate from episode 2. Because, say, if we
Mm-hmm.
were to compare the two ideals of Parko and Wilson, like Parko was more so about being united, you know, and having that quote unquote united faction type of situation as opposed to United States, to where Wilson was a little bit more of the free mind, free to do whatever you want, and that kind of gives us a feel of, not to say he here by episode 2 that we know that he's necessarily attached to the FSA, but it's like they have similar ideals. So this whole show, well, not the whole show, but the like this whole campaign, it just came out to later be seen as the United States versus the FSA in the DMZ, if that makes sense.
I see that comparison absolutely, and I agree. It wasn't until the fourth episode where like it was starting to click for me. But then even afterwards, I was just trying to like see if there was any like specific outline I can see, just to make sure my understanding was clear. But I think if there's a fault to the series, I feel like that's probably something that should have been a little more outlined very beginning, or at least second episode. You know, for us to say it's in the fourth one where we understood the outline of this entire, you know,
Mm-hmm.
setting of this story, that's potentially not what you want when you're creating stories. But in the end, I think it kind of played out. And honestly, I think it was when Alma was talking to um I think it was it the dad or was it her son? One of them, but she had a I think it was with Parko, but she had like a sentence saying that you're provoking the
Mm-hmm.
FSA to basically break the what is it called, the ceasefire, and start back up like the war in the
DMZ.
DMZ, you know. So it's yeah. um but I was gonna say one last thing. Anywho, the outline.
Yeah, I
There
just
you go,
needed. I
that's what it
think
is.
yeah, like you hit it right on the head. Like I was confused for episode 2. Like I mean episodes 1 and 2. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
all in terms of the story of Alma finding her son, and they're just like I didn't really get a clear definition as far as what is going on in the US, you know. And even though that this is
Mm-hmm.
a 4-part series, I mentioned this in the last stream that the comic is 72 issues. So I feel like if anything, there's
Mm-hmm.
much more story to the DMZ, but I'm not mad at how they wrapped the all four wrapped it up in the 4 episode series. You know, I'm not mad at it at all.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree. Like I have a lot of, I feel like, critiques about the series. And just I think the way that they played out certain aspects of it, some of the dialogue. But I'm very content with the ending, which isn't always the case with projects. Sometimes like you can love a series
Mhm.
wholeheartedly and then they just flop
Mhm.
you in the end. Game of Thrones. And this one, I feel like, you know, I really I enjoyed the story in the 4 episodes, but I feel like obviously there were some areas I feel like there could
Yeah.
have been some improvement
Yeah.
in or more development. I mean, like you mentioned, this is like a 70 plus issue story that they kind of condensed into 4 different parts. Obviously, it's not word for word. It's definitely more of
Like
an
an adaptation.
like a yeah, like a very what's the word? I feel like I saw an article that kind of worded it really well. It's kind of like they take more like
Mm-hmm.
soft inspiration, I think, from the comics, but they definitely condensed a lot of the ideas. But it wraps up really nicely. Like by the end of it, I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with the little hiccups or the little
Right.
confusion along the way. I like that. I think where everyone ended in the story, I'm pretty content with.
So when it came down to, let's talk about episode 3 now, because episode 2 kind of ended with the debate, and everyone was kind of like coming behind or giving support to Z,
Let's
aka
see.
Alma. Um, but then episode 3 comes, and she's back in Chinatown trying to. I forgot what she was trying to do, as far as if she was just looking to talk to Wilson and everything like that. But it came down to the point to where Wilson had to lay everything down on the table. Like, he couldn't just be the old friendly Wilson of old before the perch. Like, he's the quote unquote king of Chinatown, and he had to tell her this is what it is, you know. And I know she had the conversation with, let's say, Wilson's stepmom, but I guess he didn't like the answer of, Z really is just there to find her son. So he just went on to bring her in to find out who the person who's kind of feeding Skell the places of where the gold is, right? So he kind of showed his true colors to where you see who Wilson is. He could be a nice guy on the outside, but he's still he's still who he is and who the DMZ made him to be. You know, if that, I think that makes sense. Like, he had to change, of course, especially in a world like this. Um, you've kind of been left in Manhattan, right? And no governments are there for any type of support. So I can imagine, because in this is like an 8 year span. I can imagine those first few years. It was rough for everybody who was either left behind or they just stayed. You know, I can imagine there was a whole bunch of, let's say, purging at the time. You know, and it maybe came to a point to where they became more civil, and they initially started to create their crews, and from there, that those crews became the people of the DMZ.
Absolutely. And I think that that theme that you mentioned is really important. And it's kind of like the idea of how all of these characters have transformed in the 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
post, um, I think, what do they call it?
Evacuation.
Evacuation day. And, I think that there are like key characters you look at for this, and then you see it definitely in Alma's eyes, like Parco, who, pre-evacuation, pre-Civil War, he was locked up, right? He was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely powerless. Like he didn't really have, like he was essentially left to die. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we don't really know exactly how he was able to escape. I know that in episode, I think it's episode 3,
It was 3.
or
Yeah.
potentially 4, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
where Chris is talking about how he went back specifically to save his dad, and that's why he left, or you know left Alma, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's a character that you can see, like, okay, like from nothing, and then now he's one of like the kings of the factions that have been created in the DMZ. And Wilson, of course, as well as like the son. And I think it's a very jarring thing, and we obviously see it from the perspective of Alma because she's the reference point we have for
Mm-hmm.
who these people were before, but it's a reflection of what everyone else is experiencing, right? And I think I mean, we're kind of jumping around here, but I think when she has like her speech at the end of the series, I think it kind of um, encapsulates all of that. Like, these are people who have, had to change, had to
Mm-hmm.
roughen their hands to live in the world that they live in,
Right.
and revisiting that conversation that Alma has with Susie, right, the
Mm-hmm.
stepmom of
Mm-hmm.
Wilson, because I believe she was summoned there, right? Because she was doing house calls in a sense to help win support for Wilson,
Right.
because she's, trying to take down Parko to, in her eyes, win back her son. And I think that the conversation with Susie is such a huge conversation. Is hold on, I'm saying Susie so confidently, and I just want to make sure that
That's
I'm
her name.
right.
Yeah. No,
It
you're
is.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, 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 cool. I just wanted to make sure. Um, Anyways, but the conversation that she has with her, I think, is really important because it outlines a couple of things that continue in the next, in the rest of the episode and the one after. But one of the things is what happens. Let's just say, well, first of all, like, what do you think you're going to get when you get your son?
Right.
Like, I think Alma is in this episode under a lot of illusions, right? The illusion that Wilson is the man that she knew from before, right? Civil War kind of broke out, and that her son is, not the person that he's showing her to be,
Mm-hmm.
which to some degree is correct, right? But also, I think she has a lack of understanding that, like, during that time, those 8 years are pretty formative years, right? I
Yeah.
think when the Civil War broke out, like, Chris was, like
Like teens.
late teens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, late
Mm-hmm.
teens, like that adolescence into early adulthood, I feel like is a very big, like, solidifying area for who you're going to be as a
Well,
person.
I can say like you can probably speak on it. I would say even in adulthood, right? Let's say 8 years ago today, I'm not the same person who I was, and
Yeah.
same thing. Like 8 years before that, I was different. So it's like you mentioned, 8 years is kind of a formative kind of like time gap to where, say if you were Alma and you went to go find your daughter, right? Your daughter, it's like I would feel like it would make more sense if you left the quote unquote not is it naivete behind, just to think that she's the same person that she was when you had her, like
Hmm.
because she's been in there all alone, you know. So
Yeah.
I feel like Alma, even though she kind of went in just hoping to find her son, she should have went in just to kind of expect to find someone that she barely knows.
Yeah, and she obviously didn't go in with those expectations, and I think yes, like, she's correct. Like, her ex, right, Parko, had a lot of influence in how his son grew up to be, and
Mm-hmm.
that not all of that influence was, I think, in the best interest of her son, right? A lot
Mm-hmm.
of it was for Parko's own self-interest, which I think we really see clearly by the end of the series. And but it's a very, like, sad thing to see, especially, like, as a parent. Like, you obviously, like, I can only imagine missing 8 years of my child's life, especially in an area that's so sensitive, right? You're, like, just starting to really find out who you are, who you want to be.
Right.
You don't really know how to express that. You're in, like, a place where you're not very powerful, right? Like, being a teenager, you don't have a lot of resources, right?
Right.
And missing that, it's just it's an interesting concept to me. Like, it was I think the way they explore that was really cool, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Susie's character was really almost like our voice as audiences of, like, but realistically, what do you think you're going to get back? He's not going to be the kid from 8 years ago. He would never be that.
No, well, what I took from that conversation, it was never really about. To me, I didn't think it was about scale at all. This is more so Susie, she 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 knows exactly what Alma is all about. Okay, and it was to the point to where, okay, let's say you stop Parko, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Susie already, even though I'm sure she loves
Wilson.
Wilson, it was she was more so for like, we can't just leave it in Wilson's hands, because leaving it solo in someone else's hands, she's seen that in her past, and she sees that it kind of turns into more so turmoil, where if Alma were to stay, she was more so talking to her like, what can you do to fix the situation? More so she mentioned like the analogy of her taking care of Wilson as an orphan, but
Right,
like let's
right.
say the DMZ is just quote unquote full of orphans now, like which were people left behind from the U.S. and the Free State. So everybody in the DMZ were quote unquote orphans, you know, and there was no
Mm-hmm.
real person there to lead. So that
Mm-hmm.
conversation I feel like was needed. I didn't really feel towards episode 4 how it ended. That Alma was going to do what she does because at the end of the day, this was more so about her finding her son. But Susie kind of spoke to her on some, once it's all said and done, what about the rest of the people in the DMZ, you know?
Yes. And that's what I think the conversation of Susie's so like pivotal, because I think if it wasn't for that, the ending would not have ended the way it did. And
Right.
that is detrimental for the hundreds of people that live in the DMZ, which is why I love that conversation, because I feel like, it is introduced with the topic of her son, because she knows why, like you mentioned it, she knows why
Mm-hmm.
she's here, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
very intuitive. She sees through like the political guys that she's kind of like, you know, puzzling through with the DMZ. And I feel like she challenges her perspective, like on her
Right.
son, on what Wilson is. Because in that conversation, I feel like Alma is, still under the illusion like Wilson's like a great person. Like she hasn't seen the things we saw on the side end, right? Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
specific scene in episode 2 where I think he's talking to Alma, like all happy, whatever. Yes, I'm gonna go help your son. Just one moment though, and then he steps out and like tortures someone, and then
Goes gangster real
yes,
quick.
yes, and then
It's
comes back like nothing. Like
like, be
that's
right back.
sociopathic. That's on some like. So she obviously has no idea. We have an understanding of what Wilson is, which is not perfect, right? Very
Mm-hmm.
much to what Susie was speaking about, but
Wait, are you saying
um
Susie doesn't know who Wilson is?
oh no, I'm saying that I think there this is we're aware of the person that Susie is speaking about to Alma, in a sense, where she's coming in
Right.
an understanding of like, I know Wilson's not perfect. I
Right.
know one person can lead this, like, you
Right.
can't put all your hopes on this one individual, especially blindly. And then I love this whole episode because I feel like it's a very big episode for Alma, where she gets kind of ripped apart from her illusion that she's trying to maintain of like, I have a good little boy who could easily be like fixed if she just gets plucked from her as dad. And I
Yeah.
have this friend Wilson who's going to easily, it's not as simple as she makes it to be, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the analogy that Susie was using with like the orphans as well can be applied on top of that with like, Alma and her attempt to win her son is removing the two figures that are giving these people hope, right? Because, people are pretty much split between like Wilson and Tarko, right? Like
Right.
they see
Right.
both of these figures as people who are potential to help them unify, have their freedom, become, their own people in the DMZ, not just those who were left behind,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so by her plucking those two people from that position to provide them hope, it's like she would have just left the DMZ in shatters,
Oh, definitely. 100%.
vulnerable. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I love that conversation, because I feel like it really outlines the rest of, this episode, next episode, and ultimately like the finale.
Right. And with episode 3, like just kind of moving on, just when kind of going back to me talking about Wilson having to show Z who he really is, this is where uh, the quote unquote trap comes to play because he
Yes.
ended up finding out who was holding out on giving up the gold, and well, of course, he ended up shooting him, but uh, Z got the information from the guy that was shot, and come to find out that it's Scale that's stealing the gold, even though we already knew that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, from there, now they're laying the trap for Scale, and they don't know it at the time until Scale's already there, and then Wilson sees him face to face.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're here at this point, after seeing what we saw in whatever room that was with the people who knew about the gold, I was wondering how far was Wilson gonna go Skill, you know. And even though he only just tied him up, I thought this was going to be a situation is like, okay, I got the prince
Mhm.
of I don't even know what that gang's called, but I got the prince, and he could have done some gruesome stuff to him, you know, just to kind of mess with Parko's head, but he didn't really do anything, and it kind of showed me that he is kind of like a good guy, but at the same time, he knew that this move would start a war.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And I feel I totally agree with that. Although Wilson has developed to be the person that he is, like ruthless and brutal,
Mm-hmm.
in his leadership position. You see glimpses of, I think, the man he used to be, especially like in the last moments of this episode.
Yeah.
But I think it's also very strategic of him because I think when he captures like the prince, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he even makes a statement because she almost says like, don't hurt him," and I think he says something along the
It's
lines
like he
of
was
like
never
he's
going
more
to. Yeah,
valuable.
yeah,
Yeah, he's more valuable to me unharmed, which
mm-hmm.
I think is very smart because he, I think, was a lot more strategic in a way that made him kind of more sinister than,
Mm-hmm.
say, Parko, where Parko was a lot more reactive and very, like, plain, and if that makes sense, when it
Right.
comes to his
Tactics.
reactions,
Mm-hmm.
tactics, and politics. And so I think part of it was definitely a strategic move, but, there's things that happened, towards the end of the episode that would definitely also support that, he's not all bad, right? Like there's pieces of him that still
Yeah.
exist from pre DMZ. And I was even going to make this observation. Like, I feel like it takes him a while to kind of take off that veil in front of Alma because I feel like it must be nice to be able to kind of be the person you were before this traumatic event,
Right.
And I think you said it really well where you mentioned there was like a flip, right? When he
Mm-hmm.
asks her a specific question of like, what are your plans? Like, just very, I just need to know exactly. And as soon as she just says, I'm here for my son once I have him, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gone. And
Yeah.
I think he was like, okay, well, there's no chance for us to be able to move, like, to move on romantically, which is what I think he was hoping
You
for.
no, I can't really
I
say
think
that. I
he
think
mentioned
like
something about partnership and something about together. So it could have just been like as a friendship for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But I think, he realized there wasn't more to it. Like, hey, once you're like have your son, you're gonna be out of here. There's
yeah.
nothing we can continue romantically or friendship, just their
I thought it was
relationship
more
as a
so
whole.
instead of like it being like romantic, I thought it was more so a politic move in terms of it's like, oh, we can't do anything, like we can't do the politics together. That's kind of how I read that. Being that honestly, everybody quote unquote in the DMZ is behind her and she is supporting him, if that makes sense.
See, but this is where I'll kind of argue a little. And not to say that that's definitely like I think a component that could be the case, but I feel like if it was political, why he displayed his like full colors, if you will, I feel like that would have been kind of stupid of him because Alma would have easily just done what he asked because
Mm-hmm.
she's still in this illusion of like, this is Wilson, my friend, like I know him, he wouldn't harm a fly.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if it was to maintain her support in like the politics, like he wouldn't have needed to do any of the other things. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like whether it's romantic or just as a kinship and in their relationship of politics,
Right.
whatever, like that moment, as soon as she said like, no, I feel like that switch, and he's like, okay, well, I guess I gotta give up this little pretend of being
Yeah.
or just living back in that old me. I gotta come back into my what I actually am, and then
Right.
boom, so
Mm-hmm.
it was. I don't know. I love this series because of that. Like, it's an interesting thing to see,
Mm-hmm.
especially I think with Wilson because he's so quick to flip the switch in
Right.
in the scenes that we've seen him with.
Right. And it's like an easy like, hey, I'm Wilson. Hold on, I gotta kill a guy. But now I'm back, you know. But
Yeah, like I think he enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed being able to just be himself again for like a minute, and then he's like, I can't do it anymore. It's
right
there's no, yeah.
now before all hell breaks loose in this war, I do want to talk to you briefly about the Romeo and Juliet of this story.
I literally just scrolled to that piece in my notes because I wanted to make sure we didn't overlook it. Thank
Right.
you. Okay. I'm sorry, I got excited.
No, it's fine. Just because, if anything, I thought we were gonna get a little bit more in terms of that story, but they kind of kept it separate until the very end of the show, you know. But I thought it was gonna be on some, oh, you like her, oh, you like him, like really on some like Romeo and Juliet type situation. But it came down to the point to where we have these lovebirds. He loves her music. She loves his art. They're all in love. They may not say it. I don't even
Culture.
think they said the L word, but you can see it in their eyes, the where they're all googly at each other,
Uh,
you know. And here, back to the present, it's to the point to where war breaks out. Unfortunately, Wilson loses that war. Do I gotta throw up the spoiler thing? Nah, I'm
yeah.
gonna just leave it. But yeah, Wilson loses that war, but because Scales Girl is Team Wilson, she's looking at him, and she says it in episode 4. Like, I think she saw more so betrayal and like something else, like to where she didn't really quote unquote recognize this Christian, you know,
Hmm.
to where on the other side, Z saw a Christian looking at her like on some like you can see the shame. You can see that he
Guilt.
hurt her and he feels bad about it, you know?
Hmm.
So that is one even though it was a brief love story, I was actually all in for how it started and how it ended.
I think the subtlety of the Romeo Juliet storyline was really well done.
Yeah.
I'm happy it wasn't so bluntly set up in a way where we're like gonna have a scene where I'm just envisioning the Leonardo DiCaprio version
Right.
where it's like the two sides are having this little dance mon. That's what I'm envisioning in my head. But we didn't have that. We didn't have like a like that like very blunt Romeo and Juliet
Right.
story. It was
Right.
subtle where it's recognizable, but it didn't cheapen the story, if that makes sense. And
It
I think,
didn't. Well, I would say it didn't cheapen, and also when he saw her sing, and they first, uh, let's say, saw his art, right? From there, I looked at her, and I was just like, she looks Asian. Like I looked and I saw it, and I was like, I don't know. And then we didn't get the confirmation until the election, you know. So subtle, yes, but I think I noticed. I was like, she could be part of the other team. She could be a spy. I don't know. I didn't think it was like a Juliet situation. I thought she was there, honestly, to take Skell out.
oh, see, I didn't even think of that. But I think me just seeing like this like really cute love story. I feel like for us throughout these 4 episodes, I feel like it's us as viewers feeling hope for his redemption as a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like the mission of the mom from the beginning. And so I feel like that relationship was an opening for hope, and I think
Yeah.
in episode 3, the episode initially starts off with them in bed
Mm-hmm.
and she's asleep and he's like aggressively rubbing at his tattoo, which he obviously knows isn't going to come off, and it's a crown, which we learn later down the road is what his dad
Right.
got him tattooed like at 15, 16 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like she's like the hope that kind of helps steer him into wanting something beyond what his father wants, really,
Right.
which is all he's ever done. And I thought it was such a beautiful moment where they're talking, like talking pretend,
Future.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
he has 3 kids. I think she says like, oh, we'll have 2 kids, and he's just like, yes, for now. And then he's saying he wants 3,
Right.
and the art and the culture, and she gets upset because obviously she's like, we will never have that, and I just don't want to entertain it.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets vulnerable with him and says, like, Wilson, you know took my father in, and when my father died, like, he took me in and has been somewhat of a father figure, but also expressing how she feels trapped. And that's why at the end of episode 3, when he says this line, because honestly, however much I wanted him to make a different decision, the way he executes it was freaking legit. Where Skell like takes Wilson and says like, all hail the king, and just throws him out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Chills. Like, that was a pretty badass moment.
Yeah.
um and it's like you said, it's the shame, it's the guilt, all of that. And I think it's like him seeing her reaction to what he did, I feel like immediately he was like, I don't know if I did the right choice, made the
Right.
right choice.
Well,
And
he seemed like he was teetering anyway, and his dad saw that, and his dad was just like on some
called it out.
prove it, like prove your loyalty to me. And I feel like if he didn't do what he did right then and there, then his dad would have did what he tried to do at the end of episode 4.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that was episode 3, and
That
we're
was
moving
episode
on to
3.
episode 4.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so episode 4, I think it starts kind of dark because everybody's sad about Wilson losing the war, and I'm trying to remember what else happened towards the beginning. If you can help me out.
So I feel like yes, the beginning does start off pretty dramatic. Obviously, Wilson's dead. We see people mourning. We
Right.
see Skell, who looks very lost. Right, he's
Mm-hmm.
adding another name to the wall. And immediately, he regrets his decisions. Right, like
Right.
you mentioned, he was already like teetering back and forth. And something we didn't mention actually from episode 3 is he even was like, oh, like I could secure passage for us to leave. Like he was very openly willing to already leave his dad and
Mm-hmm.
have this better life, right? So now I think he's just very lost. And Alma, I think, is also kind of lost right now at the start of the episode because, although she's not the one who threw Wilson out the window, she's had a large influence in the events at the DMZ, and I think she's just shocked at like what's happened overall. By no means am I saying it's her fault that Wilson was thrown out the window, because obviously I think that probably would have happened anyway.
Right.
They had captured the prince, and they were going to do that no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's like reflecting on what her mission is and like what can I do, and it's. I have another note on here.
Would you say it was
She
like reflecting on her mission, or do you think she was feeling some type of way that all is lost and Parko has won?
Well, I would say maybe there's a mesh at all of it. That's what I'm saying. I think she was reflecting on like what has happened, her influence of it, and what's going to be her next move. Because
Mm-hmm.
then from here, she essentially takes on like the place of Wilson in that she goes to meet
Mm-hmm.
with the FSA, and she tries to negotiate passage for her and her son.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so she's definitely not out for the count, and she's not ready to let Parko essentially win, but she's trying to still complete what she came for. And being that and we don't know this yet, right? We don't know like everything she feels like she saw in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
when she saw her son after throwing Wilson, but
Mm-hmm.
she's still determined to get her son freed, right? So this is where I think she meets with like the leaders of the FSA.
Mm-hmm.
And something I made a note of is like I feel like this entire time Alma is like dealing with cards that she has absolutely no idea like how to like use, in a sense. Like it's I think a piece of the storytelling that's hard for me to digest, because she's just like a nurse who is out looking for her son,
Right.
and coincidentally she's connected to both of the powerhouses of the DMZ, and
Mm-hmm.
now she's making these political plays. And so this part kind of was like I don't know, like it was hard for me to like digest it, but I like how the story followed, so I continued. um Let me see. Oh, and here we kind of hear, I think this is where I was starting to pick up a little bit more of the pieces in terms of what is the world here in the DMZ, what is the world outside of here.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I think that they described Wilson's connection with the FSA was that he was securing
Like a
like
weapons.
toiletries.
Oh.
No,
Oh.
it was toilet paper. She's like, oh, like toilet paper gets you power or something like that, or toilet paper gets you, basically makes you a god, right?
Right.
Something so like fundamental in life, or just something so simple, was what was feeding through. But ultimately Wilson knew that the war would begin eventually, which is why he had like this connection to
FSA.
them, so that he could escape
Yeah.
essentially. Now she's trying to secure that same passage, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of where this episode starts off.
Yeah. And say because that meeting happened, and from there I think her mission right now is to find Parko. She ends up going to wherever Parko lives first, finds his quote unquote baby mom, We don't find out that. Well, I kind of had an idea that she was kind of pregnant when she wanted to talk about kids at the table. She was like, "What do you think?" And he
Oh
was just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Not right now." And then right then and there, I was just like, the way her face looked after he said it, I was like, "Oh, she's pregnant." Like, it's like a
Good
level of salt
catch.
at the table that you don't like put out of a shaker. You know, it was just like, yeah, she may be pregnant, and she confirmed it when she got into it with Alma. But she led Alma to Parco to find out that Parco is. Oh no, that was in episode 3 when she found out that Parco was working with the U.S. because that's what she fed to Scale, and she told that in the trap. She told Scale that when he was stealing the gold from the Chinese.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're mixing together the what happened. Yeah, you're right. You're totally
Right.
right.
So was that episode 3 when she ran away from getting shot at?
Um, yes, that's episode 3 because she goes looking for her son. He's there, but he doesn't like announce himself. So she leaves, and then she's with
Right,
Carmen.
right,
Carmen
right.
gets him to Parco. She sees what happens with Parco. Yeah, and then the next time we see her, I think, is when she is trying to warn um Scale that this is a setup, and then they both get like pulled,
Yeah.
and that's when they have the conversation when he's like tied up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love how we just overlooked all of this.
Right.
Romeo
I
and
mean, and
Juliet.
it was episode 3 to where that's where we learn he Parco was getting his munition from the US
Yes.
and vice versa. Wilson was getting his guns from the FSA. So that's what I
Mm.
thought the exchange was. I the toilet paper thing went over my head. I thought the FSA was just feeding him weapons and ammo, which that's what made it clear that this story is more so about the U.S. versus the FSA over the control of the DMZ, you know? But
Yeah.
this episode 4, just clearly made it so there is no control over DMZ. The only control is to the people, and Z is there to help rebuild it. So, um, say, I'm trying to think as far as Parco is concerned. Oh, it's not even Parco. She meets up with Tinny. That's the name of the singer, right?
Tenny. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tinny leads her to the radio station. Come to find out, the voice that we've been hearing has been altered, and it actually is Tinny. And she lets Z let her message out. You know, because
Mm-hmm.
Parco already thinks he's won, but Alma, aka Z. I know I keep flip flopping in between names, but it's to the point to where she makes it out there to put herself out there to be voted for instead of Wilson. You know, because she's still I don't want to say anti Parco, but she is more so about lifting the people of the DMZ to where Parco was more so about, let's say, quote unquote, ruling the DMZ, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Because that's her incentive is in power, right? Like she had absolutely no investment necessarily in the people of the DMZ. Like she could have left them however she wanted to, which is
Right.
part of the critique from Susie in the last episode. And so this is where we see her really start to shift her decision of like, I need to help the people
Yeah.
of the DMZ, and shifting obviously like her along with saving her son as a part of that. She thought like, I need to destroy Parco and then I get my
Mm-hmm.
son back. And now he's yes, like I want to save my son, but she's realizing she does have a responsibility to these people because she is removing these other two figures, or has removed these other two figures to some sense.
Yeah.
And it's like what Susie said, like, what are you going to do with all these orphans? Like she has
Right.
to own up to the influence she had made early on. So
Mm-hmm.
and then before we continue on that piece, because I think these scenes kind of get split up, right? Because we kind of shift into Alma and Tenny, and then we also have a scene with Parco and Skell, where Skell confronts Parco about his involvements with the U.S. government, right?
Right.
Because that's a betrayal. Like everything they've been preaching is like, oh, f like the American government, f
Right.
the
Right.
yeah, all that,
Mm-hmm.
and so he confronts him because he's like, how does Caesar, right, one of the other like right hand men to Parco, know more than me, like your own
Mm-hmm.
son? And I called it as soon as I saw it. I was like, "You are manipulating," because he was all like, "Oh, I was waiting for this moment for you to want to take charge, for
Uh
you to demand your place. Like, I was waiting
huh.
for this to tell you, like so
Right.
manipulative, which can, obviously it's like when you're in it, it's so hard to see the manipulation tactic. But as an outsider, like we're like, dude, he's messing with you, like he's playing you,
No,
which
but
is,
he felt it. Like by then, I would say Skell was becoming more Christian. He was kind of maybe leaving Skell in the
no,
background because Z made it clear that um, Parko kind of stole Skell's name from him. Instead of making it
yes,
a name of an artist, it made it a name of a killer, And he
mm-hmm.
is potentially like ashamed of Skell. He by this point after this conversation with Parko, he sees that Parko's dirty and it's time to leave Skell behind. And
Absolutely, yeah.
um from here, I think Z is back and looking to find Parko, and she's yelling his name. Christian hears it, and I feel at this point, Christian knows what's about to happen to Z. He knows nothing's good of what's about to happen because everything that's happened so far is because of her.
Mm-hmm.
All of what Parko was trying to build, she's already kind of destroyed. So, with that being said, um, there was a moment right before the conversation to where you can see Parko doing all this manipulation to little man
Noting.
Odie.
Yeah.
And right then, Christian was like, fam, I see the BS. And then he looks to another room and sees basically himself, like another young teen getting tatted up. He's like, this is all bad. I'm out. I'm gonna just holler at y'all. And his dad's over here trying to take a picture, and he's like, "Nah, I'm f that mess." I was like, "I'm cool on all that." So right
Mm-hmm.
now, this is the point to where Christian is finally reading between the lines.
Yes. And those were the two scenes I was trying to highlight, like for those exact reasons. It's like the scene where you see his dad very much gaslighting his son, trying to shift him into be like, no, like this was, I wanted to wait to tell you these things. And then you see him see this happen as like it's being done to Odie, and had already been happened to like the guy getting the tattoo. And then even again, I think he hears like I think he witnesses a moment with the dad, and I think he's called Babyface. I looked up at the names and I think his name is Babyface.
Okay.
The guy who's getting the tat,
Okay.
just fun fact. But he says something to him like, "Oh, make me proud. Like, let me show me that you've earned yourself to
Right.
be like a king."
Right.
And it's all just solidifying what he's known, but has had a hard time like really allowing to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we see, obviously, well, Odie is being set up to take this bomb at the entrance of the. Is it the?
FSA.
It is that for the FSA, yes,
Mm-hmm.
to especially instigate war between them and the U.S. and make the DMZ pretty much another like military like just the grounds for battle,
Right. Right.
And Alma goes to stop him with uh
Christian.
Skell, who has, yeah, we don't even call him Skelly anymore,
Yep.
with
Just call him
Christian,
Christian.
who saved her. I like the scene where like Caesar was like talking to him like, I knew you were trash from the very beginning,
Right.
and then he just gets shot by like by Christian, which
Right.
I feel like as Alma, like looking into Alma's perspective, like she must be so happy
Mm-hmm.
to like just see her son like turning back, or not turning back, but like refinding himself, under like the mess that Parko like
Yeah.
set up,
Yeah.
and it leads to this huge fight between Parko and Skell.
Mm-hmm.
Christian,
Yeah.
that was really, really well choreographed. Like as much of a mess of the outline of like the world that we're watching, like that was a really well done.
Hold on. Oh, there you are. You froze just for a second. Okay, we're good.
No.
No, we're good. So, say when it comes down to that fight, right? And from here, I'm already thinking, okay, we already seen Christian get down, episode 1, and we didn't really get to see his old man. And who's better to teach Christian how to fight than his old man? So say at the start of this fight, like the old man got, I'm calling him the old man. Parko got in a
Yeah.
few blows, and I was just like, okay, he definitely got some hands, you know. So it's like an even match. But say Parko, unfortunately, he created a monster that couldn't be tamed, and he couldn't overpower. So unfortunately for Parko, as good as a fighter he is, Christian just happened to be a better one, you know. And I think even before the fight started, it was just I was waiting just for that brief moment just to see, because initially Parko didn't know he was shooting at both Alma and Christian. He thought he was just shooting
Right.
at Alma until he came around the van, and he was like, "Oh, like what are you doing here?" You know. And this is, for those listening, this is that reference point to where at this point, uh, Parko is pointing a gun at Christian, his son, right? And Christian naturally is protecting his mother, and you would think that of course he's not going to move out of the way because he doesn't want his mom to get hurt. So instead of putting the gun down and, let's say, fighting Christian off jump, he pointed the gun at Christian and pulled the trigger. Just unfortunate that he was out of ammo. So Christian really saw who his dad was. He really understood that his dad would kill him to take out his mom, you know? And from there, that's something that a son, no matter the situation, should ever like have to go through, you know? And I say right then and there, I would have flipped a switch to where just like he did, because say by
Yeah.
the end, Parko is just like, hey man, like this place is all I know. Be like, yeah, nah, you just tried to kill me, bro. So you can go right over there. They got you. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I like the way they orchestrated it with such a gradual descent, because it's like, when you get manipulated by someone, especially like a parent, right? Someone you do have like respect for, right?
Right.
It's even though you know what you know, and it is as it is, that's what they do. They try to warp it into something that isn't. So I like how we see that gradual descent of like him being definitive in knowing, like, you know what, my dad's not a good dude. Like he
Right.
doesn't like look out for my best interest, and he's very selfish, and he's a sociopath. And then that
Mm-hmm.
like click, and then there's no ammo, was just like the definitive statement of like, you're an asshole and you're about to get your ass beat. And
Yeah.
then and again, he tries it at the end, right? That little
Mm-hmm.
tactic of trying to get sympathy, and he's like, I'm not about
Sorry.
it.
Sorry,
Throws
bro.
you to the so
Yep.
good. It's so satisfying to see him basically get dragged, and they're like, walk,
Oh, first
walk.
things first, he was like, leave the boots. Like, all right, then I was like, yeah, that's cold. He can't even walk
It's
over there
good.
in his boots. Nah, you're gonna make him walk barefoot? Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he got like a lot of his, I think, presence is like his like swagger, like right, his like demeanor, his facade of power, essentially, And
Mm-hmm.
then I think to strip him down to just like you know, the little man with like, you know, the horrible father that he is, all of
Right.
that,
Right.
it was very satisfying
Yeah.
seeing him get delivered essentially to I think those were the U.S. troops, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much how um, DMZ ended. It ended with Parko being taken to the U.S. The U.S. kind of, they were about to start a quote unquote invasion, but they backed off, and now we're here in the tunnel. I mentioned earlier there were some hashtag heartstrings, and
This
I'm
is
not.
it.
This is it right here, because by this point, uh, Christian and Z, they're in the tunnel with the FSA, and you would think that the plan was still the plan for her to leave with him, but after her conversation earlier in in the episode with Tenny, um, I was like, okay, if anything, it may be a deal to where she can maybe get all three of them out, you know?
Hmm.
Because like they wouldn't end it with just him leaving and Tenny staying behind. So I knew she was there somewhere, but like just that whole build up of he's like, wait, you're not coming with me. I'm gonna tell you, I almost felt like I was watching Tony Stark die off in Endgame. Like my heart sunk.
Why would
I
you
got
say those
choked up.
words?
I maybe like the tear was in my eye, didn't fall. You know what I'm saying? I was able to keep it in my eyeball, so my eyes were like heavily lubricated at that point. But at that in that moment, I was just like, "This is a good ass show." Oh man,
The
yeah,
ending was so the way that it wrapped up was like it was really nice. It
yeah,
was really good. It's almost like all the loose ends were tying up too well. Where it's like you obviously know Tiny's gonna be there. Like, come on, the mom
yeah,
had this conversation. She recognizes her son loves this woman.
right,
She spent time with this woman. There's no way she was just gonna like forget about her, even though she was very influential in helping her kind of get Parko out.
mm-hmm,
Um, but still I was like, it just feels like it's getting tied up too well. Like maybe they're not gonna give me this like beautiful moment, and then Tanya's just like right there. But it was such a beautiful moment to see him see her,
yeah,
right? He was
yep,
just, because neither of them, I think, ever really thought that they'd be able to leave, and not just leave, but leave with like a hope of a new life.
yeah, yeah.
It was really nice. And I think the decision for Alma to stay, I wrapped up the story even more because I feel like if she would have just left, we'd be like, oh, so we're just gonna forget about the rest of the people of the DMZ.
Well, I think
Um,
it made more sense with like say her mission since episode 1 was to get her son out of the DMZ. Like if she found uh innocent Christian in the DMZ episode 1, she would have taken him out with the little underground railroad, right?
right.
Um but I feel like if anything, this whole mission was not only just to find him, but yet if he's in the DMZ, then he is trapped. You know, I'm sure. Yes, people were able to build a life in there, but I don't want to call it a prison because it's not. But the way that the situation was with if Parko were to become governor of what that
Mm-hmm.
of the DMZ, then it would have been a bad situation for her son, you know. So I think she accomplished her mission of getting her son to a better place because that's all it was. It was more so about getting him out, you know? So she accomplished that. He's able to live his life with the love of his life and live a better life than what his father made him to be in the DMZ. So he's able to leave Scale behind and he is now Christian the artist with his singer girlfriend, you know? And that's how I got choked up. That
It
is
was good. No, it
yeah,
was good.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
good. Of all the happy endings, like theirs was the one I was rooting for because you're rooting for these people.
yeah. Mhm.
Another ending that I think made me so happy was Odie, right?
Yeah.
Because, we kind of saw throughout the episodes, had a hard time letting go of his
Granddad.
grandfather. Yeah, his
Mhm.
granddad, right? Which I think is just traumatizing. I think it just like I think um Christian and Tenny were examples of just like people being trapped in the world of the DMZ.
Mhm.
I think he also represents a lot of like the children who were literally orphaned from the invasion and all of that, right?
That's what I read. I
Um
read because his character wasn't necessarily in the comics, but he represents. They said he represents the children of the DMZ.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think it was really beautiful seeing him find home in Alma
Yeah.
and be able to let go of
His
not let
granddad.
go of the trauma, but be able to, yeah, exactly, like be able
Right.
to find home somewhere else. And I
Can we
thought that
talk
was so.
about? But I'm sorry. Can we
Go
talk
ahead,
about his quote unquote girlfriend?
Nico.
Yeah.
She is a badass. I freaking love her. I
Yeah.
love how she stood up to like the gang. It was like, I know who you are and I don't give a fuck. Like
Right.
just
Right.
it's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of us will ever be that badass, Chill. I'm just saying, like you're pretty damn cool. I think I'm
Thanks.
pretty cool.
Thanks.
That like
Yeah.
10-year-old was freaking like I love her.
Well, I think right because say if I can't count you out on that just because Grace, if you were to be stuck in the DMZ, right? And this girl, she maybe is like a preteen. She may be like maybe 13, maybe
Yeah,
14,
yeah, yeah.
So, with that being said, you would do anything to protect yourself because no matter what, where the soda machine scene, those people, that gang was there to hurt them,
Yeah.
So in a world like that, you have to be badass. You can't be soft. You have to be ready. And fortunately enough for her, in a previous episode, she found a gun and she showed how real she was and that you don't want to mess with her, So I'm not going to count you out to say that you won't be like that or can't be like that. I'm just saying that you could if you were put into that situation.
And I think that's one of the themes of this whole like series. Absolutely, it's like, what would we look like if we were thrown into this? Spend the time 8 years. Like,
Right.
how would that transform us? Honestly, look at that. Such a
Yep.
beautiful wrap of just like the theme of this entire series.
And I think I want to
Hey,
wrap with that. Oh, boom.
thank you.
There it is. My bad.
All right, listen,
I'm
I'll
so
wait.
sorry. I
I'll
didn't mean to
wait.
leave you hanging. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the DMZ. Oh, hold on. So, of course, we get the final scene of Alma basically leading her people, or I won't even say her people, leading the people of the DMZ, just to more so say that it's not going to be necessarily ruled or governed, but it's about helping one another to build it into a better place than what it was, So
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a happy ending on all fronts. So uh, DC, okay, y'all worried us. Okay, it wasn't but 2 weeks ago how we lost faith in DC Comics, and y'all gave us this gem. And I'm gonna say it's a gem just because it's only 4 episodes.
We can't say more, and it's
We
not even
can't.
connected to any of the
Right,
you know.
right.
But it
But
was good. It was
I
good.
would say it's different. Like, say it's a gem just because it's not related to anything superhero related. This is like just a story that I think it was another division of DC. I forgot the name of that company, but they're under DC. They made it, and I like it. And I don't know if you saw it. Maybe you did. I mentioned it in the last stream. The only connection to the quote unquote DC universe was the
The
Batman
shirt,
watch.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
was
the
there a
watch.
shirt?
Just kidding. Just kidding. I don't know. I know what
Oh
you're talking about. I heard the comment. I didn't catch it myself watching it, but yeah, I know the reference you're
yeah.
saying to like they had like one of the like it was a Batman watch. You said
Right.
right?
She was
Yeah.
wearing a Batman watch throughout the whole thing, and come to find out, I think she had Christian's name like engraved on the back of it. But I'll give this show, I'll give this show out of 10, maybe like a 9.5. Okay, not a solid 10, but 9.5 is still solid.
The ending, I give like 10 out of 10. The issues with the show is like, I don't know if you felt the same way too. If it weren't for the actors playing these characters, like, I feel like a lot of this would just come off incredibly cheesy. Like, even Rosario, like, playing Alma, there's just something, I'm like, I just feel like if it was absolutely anybody else, I feel like I would be so annoyed by this character in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it was, but it was good. So I think because of all the other components, I maybe read it like 8.5.
Okay.
But the ending is what pulls it higher for me. It was amazing. I like how it wrapped up. It's just as I'm watching it, there was a lot of things that made me feel
I
like this
was,
is, I don't know if that makes sense.
but I was talking to somebody that was kind of on, like, kind of feeling what you're feeling, but like on the opposite end of the spectrum to where they were a little, I don't want to say bummed that it was Rosario, but like I was kind of describing the show to them. and I like told them like Rosario was playing a medic, and they were just like, wasn't she a medic in Daredevil? And I was
Yes.
like, yeah, can we just no, it's not related. Like, and they asked me like, is it related? I was like, no, it's not. It's totally
Mhm.
different. It's DC over here. Okay,
See,
but
I think if we were, but you know what? If we're gonna use DC as a reference point, I feel like some of like the dialogue, and I think it's just specifically around her character, like almost Alma.
hmm
It made me feel like Wonder Woman 1984, like
uh-huh.
the movie, where
hmm
it's just a little cheesy, some of like the way the dialogue was written,
Okay.
but still the story itself is amazing. And if I was just rating it on the ending, it'd be 10 out of 10 for sure, because
So
of the hashtag heartstrings.
so with that, I think if we were to do a Rotten Tomato score, we would give it a fresh, basically.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
solid.
All right.
Okay.
So that was the DMZ. We spent about an hour 10 on that after the technical difficulties. So thank all of y'all for staying tuned. But I know specifically one person right here, right now, aka Jesse Pinkman. He's over here wanting to talk about Moon Knight. So
And we deliver here at the
we
CCU.
definitely deliver here. Here he is. Here he's like, now let the MCU start. All right, so we're gonna switch it on over. Jeez. Oh man. All right, so we're here. The MCU part of this podcast is live, and we're talking about episode 1, which it started out with a bang. You know, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was episode 1 of, I think Hawkeye was good. I think episode 1 of, was episode 1 of Loki good too? Yeah, because that's when,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
so far, because I think it was Wanda that kind of started a little slow.
very.
And what other shows that I don't even want to count What If, just because What If was just separate stories that kind of just linked to previous stories that we know. Because
Are you
episode 1
thinking
of What If was okay because that was
yeah.
Captain Carter, you know. So this episode of Moon Knight, I didn't know what to expect as far as what the show was gonna give us, because Grace and I, we've already kind of chatted about who Moon Knight is in the comics. Like, you know, this is someone who suffers from different personalities and this, that, and the third. But here we're only primarily getting the one personality, which is Steven, not Stevie.
Yes.
Steven with a V, or is it Steven with an N? What is it?
Are you asking me? I put Steven.
No, no, like he corrected the guy at
Oh,
the.
yeah. No, I caught the reference, and then I'm like, I think he's actually asking me, so I'm gonna pull it up right here. Yeah, but he's the main personality that we're introduced to. Like, his is the main one that we're kind of like following, but then we see, or we're kind of alluded to this other Mark person,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking potentially we're getting introduced to like a third. I'm, and I'll mention why. So as we were watching this, right? Because obviously we knew we're dealing with someone who has dissociative personality disorder. We're expecting like multiple
Wait, stop right
care.
there.
Okay.
Sorry. You can't just assume that everybody knows that this person suffers. Like, as far as how this episode started,
Mm-hmm.
like I was watching it with Yadira, and she had no idea what's going on, and I didn't break it down to her, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
this didn't really get weird until we show up in a field, right? And you hear this voice, you know? So I just wanted to throw it out there that I know that the people who actually watch and listen to us, they know that this Steven character suffers from the personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
but this episode initially didn't make it clear until maybe the last 15 minutes, you know?
Yes, like obviously there's something wrong, and I'm gonna correct one thing. We knew things were weird when the guy put the glass in his shoes and started walking around, and that was like
Oh,
first
true.
5 seconds of
True,
the
true, true, true.
of the episode. But
Right.
no, you're right. You're right. You're right. Like if you didn't, it's more reason for you guys to subscribe, guys. Like, come on, we're
Mm-hmm.
here to help you guys figure out the world of the CCU, the MCU, any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but us like knowing we're kind of looking at different personalities here, I was like kind of preparing and like writing down different like things or events or descriptions that were linking to different personalities just to keep it clear in my head.
Right.
And as I was kind of writing it out, obviously it's like the clear one, right? Like Steven's character, right? The first one we're introduced to,
Mm-hmm.
he has a ritual like for bed where he ties himself up. He's got sand like wrapped around the perimeter of his bed, right? So he can see if there's any footprints that like pass it.
Right.
He tapes his door. Am I missing any of like those key components? I feel like those are the main three, right? Like his little security measures.
Oh, door, sand, and um, that may be it. Aside from
The tape, yeah.
his foot being locked up.
Yeah. Which you already know that this guy's afraid of something that he can't control in himself, right? So even if you don't know like the specifically what's going to happen in terms of like what this plays out to be, you just know this guy's like dealing with a lot.
Right.
And we learn that he kind of induces, we called him like an insomniac, but I feel like I'd almost want to redefine it because he doesn't have trouble falling asleep.
Right.
He's trying to keep himself
He
awake.
doesn't want to go to sleep. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even like after that intro of him like leaving his apartment, he has several interactions to indicate that things happen
Mm-hmm. That
in
he's
like
unaware of.
that he has no
Mm-hmm.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And so as we're hearing these little like side remarks of like, oh, you told me you were going to take me to this meat place and you told me you were going to I don't know, these like a date, the date
Mm-hmm.
that he finds out about. I wrote this down and I just put personality number 2, right?
Right.
And so as I'm like tallying these up, and obviously we get to know Mark down the road, like we
Mm-hmm.
don't really see him until the very end. It's all like slowly kind of building.
Yeah.
But I felt like I'm wondering if the person who asked out the girl isn't Mark and maybe a third personality. Because first of all, Mark is a mercenary who hasn't been seen by who I'm assuming is maybe his girlfriend from like that phone call
Mm-hmm.
for like 2 months. Like this
Right.
man isn't like spitting game at random people. So I think there's a third personality that I nicknamed Scotty on my notes
Okay.
that we still haven't had like a
AKA Scotty.
definitive,
I gotcha.
aka Scotty. And all I have on his notes, right? All I have on his is he's a ladies' man and he eats meat.
Smooth operator. Yep. He
Yes,
definitely is like say but I feel like the way the episode panned out between her and him and this date, if this Scotty is as smooth as he quote unquote is, he can get her back, worry free. She may
I
be
have no
angry,
worries.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Just like my buddy Mark, took me on this very last minute expedition, in the
right,
Alps.
right. I had
Couldn't get
to,
out of it.
yeah, I had to handle some business trip. Sorry, love. Let me. Can we reschedule? Rain check. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
but aside from Mark and this Scotty person who we have yet to meet,
Mm-hmm.
Steven, I feel like we build so much sympathy for this poor man who just knows all this information on like Egypt because he reads to keep himself awake, right?
Right.
So we learn how he knows so much about like just history and historical artifacts. He works it in a really funny way. He works at a shop, right? But I think a shopist. He's a gift shopist,
Right.
official
That's what
title.
he said. Like, and I've never
Yeah,
heard of the term of someone who works in the gift shop. So, a gift shopist.
it was cool. I thought it was kind of funny. But he's like this really like sweet, nerdy, like timid guy
Mm-hmm.
who kind of gets pushed around by like the people around him,
Yeah.
And he's excited that he has this date that he can't remember, but he's excited he's going on one. And
Mm-hmm.
then he goes to sleep. And when oh no, we don't even see him go to sleep, but he's doing these things to stay awake. And then we just find him, I think, in the Alps, right? And like,
Wait. before we get to the Alps, because I did want to bring this guy up, and by this guy I mean the golden statue man. Okay, just because
Which one?
the golden statue man, because Steven leaves his job to go hang out at like a public place. I'll say it's just like
Yes.
a center of town to where like I've seen a few of these people in person, like either at the beach or something like that. And sometimes they can be annoying because they pose and then like this one I saw was making this one weird noise. I didn't like that one, but this guy sat perfectly still, and I was shocked that he didn't break. Like, cause by this point I would have been like, "Yo, fam, I'm trying to make a living. Can you just like go somewhere?" like I hear you. I'm so glad that you're excited about your date, but I'm a statue. Like, like relax. That's what I was thinking was gonna happen. I thought he was gonna break character to tell Steven to go somewhere, because at the end of the day, Steven is a guy that everybody keeps shitting on, and I was expecting the Golden Man to shit on him as well.
Okay. I don't know if I looked away for a second or what. I thought this was just a golden statue,
No,
which made the scene. No, I believe you. I believe you because I was looking. I'm like, dude, that guy's so detailed. Like, is he like? I wonder if down the road he's gonna come to life or something. You know, because we don't really know what's gonna happen in this series. It
right.
makes so much more sense that it's just one of those people. Like, I think I even mentioned to my partner, I'm like, he reminds me of those guys at Universal Studios, you know. But in my head, I'm like, but these are just a statue, which made the story like sadder.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know which one's sadder. Is it sadder to be talking to an actual statue or to be talking to a real human pretending to be a statue who doesn't respond to you?
But see, if you caught it, that was the reason why people were giving tips. They were
Yeah.
giving tips to the
Oh,
Golden guy.
I thought they were. I was like, I saw the tip, and in my head, it went into the like fountain thing that they were like. I must have blacked out. I pulled a Steven. I
Yeah,
think
you sure
I
did.
really
Yep.
rewrote my memory of that scene. I was like, oh, he's just talking to a statue, and people are throwing coins into like the water. You know, this makes more sense.
Okay,
We
so
continue.
wait, before we continue, because now being that you said that, let's say if you were to have a quote unquote alter ego, what would their name be?
Oh, I
Who was
know what the
actually
name would
watching?
be.
Who? What is it? Give it to us.
It would be Gwen, which is short for Gwendolyn,
Okay.
which is my secret name
Okay. All right.
for cases that I need secret names in, which I can't disclose because it's the secret name, you know? But yes,
So so it was Gwendolyn that was watching the scene basically. Gwen.
Gwendolyn.
Gwen was watching it.
Gwen.
Okay.
What would be yours?
Oh, my government, which I'm not gonna give on no on here. Y'all know chill. Y'all know Derek, but you do not know Derek's government unless you've either worked
Oh,
with them.
I know.
You do know.
I learned.
Right,
I love
right.
secret names. I need to find a new one because I just disclosed my alias, but it's okay. For
Yeah.
now, it's Gwen.
All
Yeah.
good. So
All good.
let's just say Derek will be my secret name for now. But my
Dude,
first
yeah.
first name would be my secret name. But
Oh,
anywho, moving on. When it comes
I want
down
a
to
secret name.
where we left off, because after the Golden Man, this is where uh Jesse said, Jesse is my secret name, so I don't know how to keep secrets. Yes, I know Jesse because I love Breaking Bad, and I know that's where you got that. So, after the Golden Man, this is where he somehow tries to stay awake, but then scene switch to him in the middle of a field. Now, can you kind of give us or shed some light on, like, I didn't read into it, but someone online had posted something like, "Hey, this is like a famous place," and I know like later on we get like the whole truck scene, and somebody pointed it out in the trailer how like a box behind him was uh labeled Von D.
Hmm.
Like, so of course people are just like, oh, it's Victor Van Doom or something like that. So I'm just kind of curious just to know um if this town is, because I think Victor Von Doom is known in the comics to have his own town, right?
very little of this, but I know exactly what you're talking about because as I was watching this episode, it was my partner who said like, oh, like people are saying it's like the village of like of he was saying like Doctor Doom,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So apart from that, and that people are like hypothesizing that this is the case, I don't know much of like aside from that, but it's something definitely people are calling out. And I mean, obviously, like we're outlining the next 10 years of
Right.
Marvel. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't doubt that we're on point with that, like, you know, assessment, right? These things don't happen randomly,
It,
right?
it doesn't
So,
it doesn't happen randomly, but this is something that if this is the case, if this is the city of Von Doom, right? This is where Fox has fallen short, you know, because if he's always had a town of his own, then every adaptation of the Fantastic Four starts with either him owning his own company, he's just super rich, he's like
mm-hmm.
an evil Tony Stark basically, or I think even in the darker version of the Fantastic Four, he was just a random scientist. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
never really gave into who Von Doom was, who his family is. You know, and so this is the first time we actually get some type of, if this is true, because all of this is really just people
Guesswork.
speculating, you
Yeah.
know. But if this
Yeah.
is true, then we're getting a quote unquote backstory of the Von Doom family.
Which I wouldn't put it past Marvel, Disney, right? Because, you know, I think something that they've done is given a lot of these comic book characters more depth than we've seen in other films, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
with how wide the world is. So I wouldn't say that, I feel like that would be kind of a cool take on it.
Yeah.
And definitely like a perspective of that character that we haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if this is like, let's just say a solid Easter egg, I'm excited to see what else they kind of explore with it for sure, you know?
It should, just because with all the, well, not all the, like, because you mentioned that Kang has a variant of, who's Kang related to? Mr. Fantastic, right? Quote unquote. Reed Richards. Like Kang has a Richards variant, and he's
Um,
like the grandfather, great grandfather of Reed Richards.
Yes, like there's I don't know how to like word it specifically because it's never always fresh, but yes, there's like a variant that's associated with like Reed Richards and like all of that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I
So that's
do.
what I'm saying. It's in the world of what's going on right now. Like I think this could be a solid Easter egg, you know?
Yeah, and I do have a
Yeah.
question in the chat. They're asking, do you like this more serious tone of the MCU? Does it feel weird for you, or are you happy to see it? Grace, why don't you go ahead and?
We talked a little bit about it, I think, in the last episode we were doing together, and that yes, it's different than what Marvel's done, and we're kind of excited about that, right? Because we've
Mm-hmm.
seen Marvel take on different tones based on the character and like the stories that they're telling, right? Like compare Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, Loki, Captain America. They all have different, I think, like
Feels.
feels. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like a new one that's being tackled, which I think that they did in a way, right? Because there's a lot more suspense to this. There's more you know, we were watching it at night, so definitely in, like the elevator scene, you know, we saw snippets of it in the trailer where he's like running from this like white like figure.
Mm-hmm.
It's suspenseful, right? And they're definitely playing with that type of genre, and I think it
Right.
melted really well with what we still expect from Marvel, right? Like the lightheartedness of Steven's character, the likability of him, and just I think it meshed well, and I want to see more.
Oh,
And I
definitely, a
think,
hundred percent.
yeah, and I think it's a really good. I mean, I'll call it a prequel just because I can't think of a better word to use, but I think it's a really good like uh, prequel to then seeing something I think similar in Multiverse of Madness, which was, you know, stated to be somewhat of like a scary, you know, type of Marvel film,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think my answer is, it just mimics hers. I'm pretty much happy to see just something different, because you can't keep giving us the same old thing. And if I were just to kind of think back, I think for me that is where Age of Ultron fell short for me, because I feel like if anything, um, it was another version of the Avengers to where the Avengers won, you know? And this wasn't like, I've said in the past, Ultron wasn't what I was hoping to be. I was hoping it to be a little different, but then they changed up the formula, and that's what we got in Infinity War, you know? The heroes lost, you know? We got something new because we've never really experienced a movie to where it ends with the heroes losing to the villain,
Yeah.
you know? So this is different, and I think no matter what, Marvel as of right now should either not either should just continue to keep giving us different stuff because, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago, is like we're getting the dark feel here, and then we're gonna get a little lighter type of hopefully comic book more vibe with Miss Marvel, you know. So at the end of the day, I'm happy that they're changing it up. I don't want to see. I mean, I do want to see more of Loki, but don't give me another Loki type of show for Moon Knight. Make Moon Knight something of its own, and that's what this is. You know, it's a little bit darker, but it still had the comedy behind it, but more of the scarier type of suspense, and not necessarily the action type of suspense.
Yeah, and just on the same lines, like I think I like that they're diversifying some of the way that they're, bringing out these new projects. I think Miss Marvel and Moon Knight were such great contrasts to talk about in our last episode together,
Mm-hmm.
because of that. Because I think it displays that Marvel, I think, is playing it really well. And seeing Moon Knight, just I mean, it's just episode one, but you see the imprint of Marvel that we expect, but
Mm-hmm.
it's being blended in a way that hasn't been done before, which keeps it fresh. Like
Right.
we are obvious, like lovers of this world. Like we want this to continue for 10 years. So absolutely, like I'm rooting for whatever keeps it alive and it's still
Mm-hmm.
genuine to what we like. And before we continue with the episode, just on like the note of suspense, as you know, for work, I park on like a park, like the roof of a parking complex.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I got in like at 6 in the morning today. So I got there like 5:30 a.m. and it's dark, right? And I'm like the only car on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take the elevator to go down to like the floor where I go
Oh
to work.
yeah, you're the
And
elevator person. I totally
I'm
forgot.
the elevator person. Yes, no one else does this. Like no one else does this. We used to work together at the
Right.
same place. I
Right.
just have a weird. I have much like Steven in this series. I just have a very
Has a
weird
routine.
ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I am like I'm going into like take the elevator and I'm actually scared. Like I'm just like pressing because like the scene from the episode, because I watched it last night, was just in my head and I was just like made it in. So they killed it on the little bits of suspense that they definitely put into this episode
Wait,
for sure.
just to kind of tack onto that, random question: Do you
Yes.
do you park by the elevator or by the stairway that's by the building?
I park by the elevator
Okay,
because I
so
like to sing in the elevator.
okay, all right, because
Yes.
there is. I just want to make it clear there is a stairwell right next to the
Would
entrance
have been scarier.
of that place, but
The
Grace
stairwell is
chooses to go
closed.
into the elevator, especially at a dark time. Even though it's 5:30 a.m., it's dark. I've been over there and I know what 5:30 looks like. It's not it doesn't feel safe sometimes, you know.
No.
So anywho, moving on. We are getting to this field, okay? Because this is where stuff starts to pop off. You know, you think Steven is just kind of living his life. He's trying to keep himself awake, but then he randomly wakes up in this field and he doesn't know how he gets there. But we get a voice here, okay? This voice, it doesn't sound like Oscar Isaac at all. So this is raising another question of, is this Mark? Is this Scotty? Or is this an external being inside of this body? You know, you just don't know what's going on. You just kind of have a feel of being, you're actually standing in Steven's shoes. You're lost. You have no idea what's going on, you know? And I kind of like how they flipped it up, because this is the first episode that, oh no, the first thing we get in the MCU that we get a voice in someone's head outside of Friday or
Most similarly, it's
uh
like Venom.
yeah, it is like Venom, you
Yeah,
know. And
especially with the
wait,
verbal abuse.
who was what was Vision's initial name? Jarvis. That's what I was trying to
Yes.
think of, you know. So we get somebody that we get a voice that has a feel of he does not like Steven cuz he's just like the losers here. Give the body back.
Yes.
You know.
I wrote down some of the insults. So I feel like this most reminded me of the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock, right?
Uh-huh.
Because of
Mhm.
like the verbal abuse that they kind of put up with each other.
Right.
He's like stupid, idiot, parasite, like, and I think when he said parasite, that like when I was watching, I'm like, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock. So I feel like this is like the Egyptian like god entity that essentially inhabited. I
Mhm.
think it's supposed to be Mark's body, right? Because Mark is aware of this entity. This entity is aware of Mark and that they have a
Mhm.
relationship, right?
Mhm.
I think that's what this is. And since I didn't
Right.
couldn't remember like that, I believe that they do specific. And we may have even mentioned it in earlier episodes. I just don't have those like notes fresh where I had that stated. But
Mhm.
I believe it's a specific like entity or god
Mhm.
in Egyptian like mythology that they kind of embedded with this story.
And he may
And
have mentioned it like because he said he was talking to his fellow employee about this poster and it was like I guess showing 7 of 9 Egyptian gods. So Stephen may very well know who this god is. He may not know it right now, but I'm
mhm.
sure with all of his readings, he knows precisely who this being is.
Yes, yes. And Amit, who is the goddess that the character we haven't really brought up yet, but we do meet him
Mm-hmm.
pretty soon after we see him in this field
Mm-hmm.
in the Alps. His name is
Arthur.
Arthur Harrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like the villain. So the goddess that he essentially like bows down to, it's mentioned that she was locked away and by other gods. And so I'm wondering if maybe the god that essentially possesses the body of like Mark and Stephen is one of the gods that put her away. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why there's like this conflict. You know what I mean? This is where my mind's headed. And I feel like we're not too far off from it. But
We're not just because there is a conflict, of course, you know.
mhm.
But say when this let's say this being you said the word itself called Steven a parasite. That right then and there it almost made it clear that this body does not belong to Steven.
Mhm.
But if it doesn't belong to Steven, you're going to see if you haven't watched this episode or if you have watched this episode, then you got to think who is Steven calling on the phone? Who is he leaving these voicemails to? He thinks that he's calling his mom, but do you now believe that who knows? Mark may have programmed his phone to call a random uh, number that's off or that just takes voicemails, you know. But yeah, that was the point right there to where this being made it clear that Steven is just a personality in Mark's body.
Yeah, and honestly, it depends. It might just depend on the perspective. Like, who knows? Like, maybe that is the case because that's a huge question mark, right? He's not talking to someone on the phone. He's leaving voicemails, which is so sad because they're
Right.
such like intimate voicemails. Like, he reminds me of Michael Scott and like some. Every character is Michael Scott to me, he reminds me of Michael Scott in that he leaves these like lengthy, like very detailed voice messages, and you think he's on the phone with someone. He's like, "Okay, call me later," kind of a thing, and then just hangs up.
Right. Right.
So honestly, that's definitely possible. Like maybe it's weird to say, and obviously Mark has his own ritual himself, right? He
Mm-hmm.
has a very specific hiding spot in Steven's apartment with the cell phone, with I think there was a wallet, maybe. I think there's a couple of items in
Yeah.
there. So it's hard to say, but I think there was something I wanted to mention with the Alps. Okay. So there's a specific exchange, right,
Mm-hmm.
happening that apparently Mark interrupted, right,
Mm-hmm.
with the golden snitch it's a beetle, but that's all. Like when I saw it, it looks
It's
like
not
the
Harry
golden
Potter.
snitch.
Don't call it a snitch. When I saw it, I think I just assumed scarab just from watching. I was like, oh, I've seen the movie The Mummy. I know what
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is.
yeah.
I'm an expert. That's
Yeah.
a scarab right there.
See, in my mind was like golden snitch, and so,
Right.
but it's yeah. So he finds himself in this group of people who are following, who we meet to be like Arthur, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And Arthur has this like tattoo of like a scale
Mhm.
that he can, I'm assuming with the powers of a myth,
Mhm.
right? Essentially determine a person's goodness, but not just on like what they've done, but everything from past, present,
To
and
future.
future.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Mhm.
he witnesses one person, being told like, "Oh, you are a good man," and then the
Mhm.
next woman that comes up, he's like, "Oh, like," and he's
Sorry.
genuinely sad for her. He's
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, like." And then she says something like, "I've been so good my whole life." It's like, then it's something you will do at some point
Mhm.
in your life, and she dies, right? So we
He
see
just like
this
sucks the
kind of,
life out of her.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just leaves like a corpse, pretty much, right? Like
Yeah.
I think her hand color changes. It's
Yeah.
yeah, we don't,
Mhm.
yeah. It's pretty crazy. And it's almost it's very culty, right? Because it's this whole town.
Right.
Um, and it reminds me of like the cultist who basically like had power over almost like a size of a town,
Mhm.
and it's like this. It's like the what is it? There's a specific name to it. It's the one where it was like the mass like suicide, right? They all drank something.
Mhm.
Do you know which one I'm talking about? Do you have like a vague idea of which?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the specifics.
Yeah,
That's where
well, that
the saying
yeah.
comes to say like don't drink the Kool-Aid or something like that.
Yes, you
Yeah.
know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the feels I got because they're all like bowing to him. That's how Steven kind of gets like called out because he obviously didn't respond quickly enough with like the group, right?
Right.
And then they noticed the blood on his hands. Or no, not yet. Hold on. I think I may have been following my notes a little too ahead.
But before you get
Go
there,
ahead.
can we talk about the glass real quick?
The
Like
glass
the way
from the
this
shoes.
show, yeah, opens. Like you see a glass just look like did he drink anything out of it? I don't remember. Like I just remember he put it in a napkin, broke it, and then emptied the glass shards into his shoes and put his feet on the inside. Now, I wouldn't well, first, yeah, I would never, but like am I just to assume that this is what a sacrifice to
His
this
god,
god?
the goddess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know because he just walked off as if it were nothing. To where me, I would be like, you know, this is like, this is
It's like when you go outside and you forget your shoes and then you
right.
got to walk on the rocks to get the mail or
Right,
something.
exactly.
None of that.
So
No.
yeah, I saw that and I was like, okay, this is already because you can tell that it was already Arthur from the back, like from the hair and what he was
Right.
wearing. You knew that this wasn't Mark or Steven, this was
Mm.
Arthur, and just in seeing that, I was like, okay, so this guy is maybe a little nutty. And I'm not saying like crazy nutty, but just he is someone that A, we already know to be the villain, and B, I think if anything, as far as human villains go, this is maybe the darkest that we've seen, in terms of potentially like human sacrifice just to serve something, So I thought that to be interesting. I liked it. I like how the show opened.
Yes, and I think I mean that was the purpose is like to show us like this is not like potentially a sane man. Like this is not normal.
Right.
And I love how it just leaves you there because the next thing you have is Steven, I think, waking up or something like that. But yeah, and I think when you see him, fully, right, Arthur in that scene in the Alps, I think it just all like connects. And then I think even more so when we have him speak with Steven in the museum, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back into the Alps, like I love this sequence of scenes where Steven is obviously has no idea what's going on, no idea who he's with, and then like he's trying to give this the golden snitch
Mm-hmm.
to Arthur,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like an internal force is literally like whisking it away, and he's like, I am
Venom.
not doing this.
Venom is,
Yeah, it's Venom. It's Venom.
Venom
Yeah.
is controlling him.
This is why I like their relationship so much, because it reminds me of Venom. That it's I love it. It's fun, and I love how we're seeing the blackout
Mm-hmm.
and then just back to him. Like we're not seeing the in between yet. I think we're gonna see that in the second episode. I think we're gonna get a good chunk of it in the second
Right.
episode, but we're kind of being left with the suspense of like, oh man, like I'm missing all the good stuff, like the action, the ass kickery. Like we just see him with now blood in his hands, and you know that he beat these guys up and now he's walking away, but every time he's under like his life threatened,
Mm-hmm.
right, he flips into what we assume is Mark
Right.
and then comes back into Steven.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved all that sequence, because then in the end, right, it really it just it loaded up that last scene we see in the first episode,
Definitely, and we kind of get that scene in the Alps, and then it goes into the chase, and that chase we kind of broke down already. He kind of blacks out, goes in and out, in and out, but then he wakes back up, right? And like I'm gonna put the picture back up. I had it up earlier, but this is where like he has his box of chocolate in his hands, and he thinks
uh,
that it's like Friday, but so far it's 2 days have passed, and that's when it starts to click, he asked the waiter, he's like, what day is it? And the waiter's like, Sunday. And once he says Sunday, Steven like he you can see it,
uh,
you can see the breakdown to where the waiter's asking, what would you like? He's like, oh yeah, steak, sure. How would you like it? Good. I'd like it good, and then and and then he was like, how about well done? And then from there, in my mind, I was like, I don't like steak well done. It's not good when it's well done for me. I
don't do
feel
it.
like if it's just like at least medium well, don't go well for the steak, But from there you see the panic. You see the breakdown. Days have passed. You have no idea. And I think he does have some idea. That's why he's going through all these measures to lock himself up in this room.
Of
He
course,
mentioned
yeah.
it on like earlier to where I think it may have been in leaving a voicemail. He's like, I have no idea. Like I just woke up, but I feel like I just got hit by a truck. And that's because his body
You
is
did.
physically tired from whatever Mark or Moon Knight is doing to him, But I guess it goes into. Does it go into the next day? To where he's back at the museum? Yes, because he shares the
Yeah,
same bus with Arthur. Arthur
Arthur.
sees him on the bus and then meets him at the museum. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so sad because he wakes up and he's relieved because he thinks it was just a dream, right? He's like, okay, my ankle brace is still on. I didn't move the sand, the tape, all of these things, but he notices the fish, right?
Right.
Because I think the idea was that the fish only had, and if anything, because I think we saw the fish when he first woke up at the start of the episode. I didn't
I
really
wasn't paying
pay much
attention. Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of want to go back and see, like, did it really just have one fin? Because he notices the fish because he's like, morning, Gus. I think his name's Gus,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, you have two fins. You have two fins. And then he goes to the pet store and he's trying, that's how he finds out. And then he's like, oh my God, it's this time. I'm running late for my
Right,
date. And then
right,
he's like,
right.
no, bro, like you're not just late for your date. Like you're
Your
2 days,
day's late
you
for your
know?
day.
Um, yeah, and it's so heartbreaking because you can tell he's like so excited, He's like, I got this date with the girl who I probably would never have asked out myself
Mm-hmm.
because I'm too scared.
Mm-hmm.
And he breaks down like, not only did he just say I'm gonna get steak, this guy's like a vegan or vegetarian. So for him to be like, just give me the steak, man, like you just know he's really going through
Right.
it.
So I
Yeah.
think if anything, it was after this breakdown. Do we get the elevator scene here?
Let me
Because
kind of
the
skim
I
through.
know right before he meets with Arthur, right at the museum again, he wakes up yelling on the bus from seeing the Egyptian god in the elevator. Like he wakes up yelling.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that I'm assuming that elevator scene was right after the date and right before the interaction with Arthur
That's how
again.
I got. Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
it got stitched together. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just have an image of like I have a still image of the creature, and I'm just looking at it. It looks kind of crazy. I don't even know. Like he has like a huge. If that's a beak, he has like a huge either nostril or hole in this beak. It's a weird. It's a weird creature, you know. So whoever designed this and thought like, oh, this is the Egyptian god of this, I guess kudos. This is new. This is original, you know, just because looking at it, I don't know. It looks kind of dead as well. It almost looks zombified too. And then watching the trailer, I'm thinking, if anything, this creature is what gave Moon Knight the Moon Knight powers to Mark.
That's what I'm assuming. Like I figured this was like the embodiment of the voice we're hearing. Like that was what I thought going into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure yet,
Right.
right? Because we still have, I think, a lot to
Oh,
find out.
definitely.
But yeah, like that's what I kind of felt is like this is the embodiment of essentially like the entity that is giving him the powers that he has.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
And I was going to. Oh, so here, like we've connected the piece from the elevator into getting back into the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where he has that confrontation again with Arthur,
Mm-hmm.
who's like, you really are just like a gift shopist,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And he kind of breaks down their ideology and what I'm going to call his cult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we realize this cult is much more widespread than just this little town in the
Oh
Alps
yeah.
because come to find out several of the workers at his museum like are part of this cult.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this is where we get the understanding that you know they serve the goddess of Mit, who is betrayed by other gods, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming one of them is you know the entity that resides inside Mark and Steven. And let's see, judges on the past, present, future, and as he's assessing, right, when Arthur takes um Steven's hand, he assesses like you have chaos in you. So I mean I feel like it's a given, right? Like I would assume he knows of whatever entity is inside
Mm-hmm.
Steven,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like would you
He
assume as
well, I
well?
would say he knows of something. I won't say he knows 100%.
Specifically, yeah.
But like say I feel like based off of what he's done with all of his other followers, it's it's always been like a solid answer. Either you're good or you're bad, you know? And being that his little judgment tattoo was just wobbling and he said there's chaos in you, I'm just going to say he may know that Steven may not be the only person in this body. Like, I'll just say that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, and you know what? Maybe that is more so, right? Because how can you judge like how do you judge three people together or plus people? We don't
Right.
know if it's just you know
Just the other,
Mark,
or
Steven,
Scotty.
and
Yeah.
Scotty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's probably a more likely the case.
Right.
Like, sure, maybe does he also know that he happens to also have this god, like Egyptian entity inside him as
Right.
well? Maybe, but I think you're right. And this is where we get that chase scene of do we get it or does he go into inventory first? I forget. I feel like maybe he blocks out again and goes into doing his inventory and then he looks
No, no,
he
no, no.
tries
Yeah, like
looking.
so. Say after the judgment, and the whole chaos line, he runs away, and then Arthur was just like, just let him go or whatnot.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah.
So
Okay.
from there, yeah, he's doing inventory as punishment because his fellow employee. I don't even know if that's his manager. I think she's just like
I
another.
think it's his
Yeah,
manager.
but
It gives, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, like he's doing inventory, which I've done in retail. It sucks, and I felt him. You can see it in his face. It's a sucky situation. But as he's leaving, he hears a dog crying. You know, so a concerned what do you call it? A concerned Samaritan wanted to go find the dog just to
Of
make
course.
sure everything was all right. But then you see a creature emerge in the shadows, and that this is where if it wasn't horror by now, it's right here at this point to where things start to get a little scary, and you can see it. Oscar Isaac does a great job at portraying fear, especially for this character Steven, because if he wasn't pale already, he looked pale then, you know. And I have an image right here where I named it Steven meets Mark, you know, because this is where.
I have that in my notes.
Okay.
Just wanted to.
So, yeah, this is where the creature emerges, and then Steven safely gets to a bathroom
Mhm.
surrounded by mirrors, and now enter Mark. Like, he's heard Mark's voice in his apartment, but it wasn't really
Yeah.
clear because Mark was in the shadows. But now we get the clear image of Mark as a separate entity in the mirror that's different from Steven.
Yes. And my notes, like for this section, that's what I put. Well, I labeled it like that when we first heard the voice. I just put Steven meets Mark. So I was excited that that's what you also labeled your the display you have on. But this scene I love so much because we obviously know Mark is aware of Steven and has been aware of him, like the entity that resides within both of
Right.
them knows of this like nuisance that is Steven, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way that this like the initial voice refers to him, but Mark like speaks to him in a very brotherly way, like, hey, like I can save us, nothing's going to happen to you. And I just thought that was really cool because we know, from what we've seen of Steven, like he's very, like he's even before being chased by a monster, he just seems like very like weak,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like he just kind of walks around in like a scared way
Right.
anyway, you know?
Right.
So it was really cool to see that interaction between the two of them, and that Mark has like a very patient like voice to him, right? He's not like stupid, give me the control, like the way
Right.
that the other
Right.
voice was.
Right.
And we don't, we see the monster come in, and I think that they framed this really well, especially with the way this is being framed in this genre, where you see the monster make contact with Steven or Mark,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just kind of have like a side shot. You just hear things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Being that we've seen little snippets that look similar in the trailer, I feel like we knew like Mark was okay, Steven was okay, but I like that they showed the brutality of the attack, switched the angle, and then we saw it back in, and we see Moon Knight just beating down on this monster,
Mm-hmm.
turning around, and then just walking towards us, very like like in the trailer,
Right.
and it was just
Right.
like done. That was such a great like finish. I was upset
So
that it was over.
this is the first time that we have gotten a superhero without uh an origin story, because by this point Moon Knight is already in there, in the body, in the vessel, and it wasn't until Mark had to take over to bring Moon Knight forward,
Mhm.
because every other story that we've got is always like how Iron Man became Iron Man and so on and so forth, and Captain America, So it starts off to where we're getting Moon Knight in episode 1, and that's one thing that I like. Um, I don't say we necessarily need an origin story. Yes, it'd be cool if later on down the line they explain how the connection came to be, but I don't see them having a flashback. I think it's just more
Yeah.
so going to be a story of eventually Mark breaking down and seeing like, hey, this is actually my body, and you came to be when I came in contact with this Egyptian being or something like that.
Yeah. So and that could totally be the case, and we really don't know like how it's gonna play out yet. Like this is a whole new genre, a whole like even the whole like concept of shows for DC and Marvel. It's like only in our second year of doing that, right? This is so early on.
Mm-hmm.
With this, but I believe the way it's framed is that this is someone who has dissociative personality disorder who then came into contact with this like entity, like the god that I'm assuming was the first voice we
Mm-hmm.
heard. So I think it's more so their multiple worlds colliding with that, and now that's the story that we're kind of seeing. And for Steven, I think it is kind of like an origin story for him and his perspective because he's now just realizing he has these abilities,
Mm-hmm.
right? For Mark, it's like that's the story we've still yet to
Right.
see. And I feel like you're right. Like we don't always necessarily like need an origin story to get the full picture. I feel like if it fits in terms of like the gaps and it feels cohesive for the specific character, then
Mm-hmm.
sure. In this case, I feel like I totally agree. Like we're gonna have to have a little bit deeper of an explanation than say what we got with like Spider-Man, where all he did was like a soft little nod to what we know,
Right.
kind of fill in the
Right.
blanks,
Right.
right? Here, being that it's a brand new character to a lot of people, right? Not new to the comics, but new to I think like being adapted
Mm-hmm.
in any like film, TV series, new to a lot of people. Like I think this is a place where we definitely do need like that origin story, and I feel like it's kind of a cool or it's a very unique way to see it because as we're learning about it, so is
Mm-hmm.
Steven, right? Like Steven's gonna find out like or get more of the details of how they came to be, you know, or
Right.
to be blended with this like God. So it's all really cool and interesting and I'm just excited to get more of it. Like I'm sad they only gave us one episode like to launch this series, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of it.
Well, let's say if 2022 went as planned, I think this year would have been a year of superhero movies without origin stories. And by that I mean uh, not just movies, but TV shows too. Because the Batman, I'm so glad they didn't give us the Martha and Daddy Wayne Pearl situation again, you know. And from here, um, we may get like I said, or like you mentioned, we may get a sense of how he became Moon Knight, but it didn't start out as like of him becoming Moon Knight, you know. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I was gonna say it was safe to assume, who knows, as far as switching universes going to DC. I think Black Adam would have just started out with how the trailer started out with him being broken out of the prison that he was in, and he's
Mhm.
already Black Adam, you know. So I thought, or I would think that this year would have been a little different when it comes down to the introduction of a few superheroes.
Yeah, I like and I exactly. I feel like it just if it fits with the story, if it fits with the way they're trying to tell it, like I'm all for it. With this one, you know, I think it's perfect the way it was displayed, especially for this first episode,
Mm-hmm.
because we're kind of learning along the way, just like Steven, right? One of the main characters. So I'm excited for it. And I think once they, you know, I feel like it might even be in the second episode that we're going to get next week, like maybe get diving a little bit more onto like how this came to
Yeah.
be. I'm okay if we don't get none of that in episode two and we get more of the action just because we were very, I don't want to say deprived of it in a bad way. I think it was very
Mm-hmm.
strategic to like cut out those very like what I'm assuming were badass like fight
Mm-hmm.
scenes because we still hadn't been introduced to Mark. But now that we've seen the full Moon Knight, I feel like episode two is going to be very action based. And maybe episode three is where we're going to get more of information or maybe a mix of both. I'm just
Well, say
excited.
when it comes down to Mark, just in general, just because uh, Arthur doesn't know who Mark is. The only person that knows who Mark is the woman on the other end of the phone. You know, so say um, the like this. The only reason why I'm bringing this up is because um, that I think that's what makes sense to me when it comes down to Mark. This is the original body of Mark, and I feel as if, who knows, I probably am wrong and I'm just spewing out stuff, but who knows. I think it wasn't maybe until contact with this being that kind of split these personalities, because there's no way that a mercenary can be a mercenary with multiple personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, in the real world, totally agreed. In the world of superheroes, potentially, but it's a fair point. Yeah, like it would be very hard to disappear as like a what is it called, like a souvenir shop
Right.
clerk for, X amount of time and then be a mercenary, all of that, right? But and so I'm excited to see how it plays out, especially with it being such a good first
Mm-hmm.
episode. And I feel like there's just so much still to answer with
Yeah.
this character, and I kind of want to dive back into my notes from when we saw the first trailer, because I haven't looked at them too recently. I looked at them a little bit last week in preparation for seeing the first episode. But I feel like it's outlined a little bit more in his comic series to see how it looks there. Because even if, say, in the comics, it's like someone who does have dissociative personality who now has to manage not just that, but also being like a
Mm-hmm.
superhero, they may be adapting it differently here as well. So it's something I'll make sure to kind of look up for you guys so that next time when we see like episode 2, etc., we can kind of compare, because I'm sure either in episode 2 or 3 we're going to start to get a little bit more answers at how this came to be,
Right.
right?
And I do have a question in the chats. They were asking, how will this connect with other Avengers? Will they know for each other, or like know of each other, or is this just its own spinoff? And Grace kind of answered this a couple weeks ago, saying that um, I guess the producers said that this is not connected to the Avengers, but I just read something today that this takes place after Hawkeye. And
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, that's still vague. It is still nothing concrete as far as it being in connection to Hawkeye, because who knows, it may just be after Hawkeye but in a separate universe. So all will be explained. I don't have the answer. Grace, do you have anything?
Um, I think you said it really well. Like, it's like I don't think anything's set to be definitive just yet, especially with the multiverse of madness around the corner. I don't think it's meant to be definitive at this point either. In the initial statement that I think it was I forget if it was the writer, producer, but someone in the uppers of this series had made the statement that this is not part of the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of defer to assume it meant that this character is just so early in the developments of being, Moon Knight as like a superhero and developing his own story, that I think it will just take some time for him to be connected with the stories of the other Avengers. We don't even have necessarily an Avengers right now either, right? So there's, I think, a lot of things needing to develop, not just team wise, but also just in this specific character as Moon Knight before he connects with the other characters that we know already. And there was another statement, I didn't get a chance to read it specifically, but it was from that same person who was kind of elaborating on his initial statement to say that, yes, like Moon Knight is obviously in the world of the MCU. I just don't think he's going to be making like direct connections with I don't think we should expect him to come up in Multiverse of Madness
Mm-hmm.
with Doctor
Mm-hmm.
Strange and Wanda anytime soon,
Right.
but he which is kind of cool because we get to kind of explore this character. I don't want to say contained in a bubble, but in a sense, contained in a bubble to just kind of see his world. I think from this episode alone, a lot of us already just really like this character and invested just from looking at
Mm-hmm.
Steven, and the little bits of Mark. So, I think that this is such a good move on Marvel's part because I think it's one of the areas we've already discussed that kind of flopped Eternals, right? They
Mm-hmm.
were kind of thrown into this major destruction event that didn't feel earned. Almost felt like a slap to the face a little bit with other heroes. And I think here it's kind of like he's sowing his own, like Moon Knight is kind of earning his right to play with the big boys, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah.
I think it's a smart move. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to add about the episode?
Not in particular. I think we went over the big points. I'm just excited. I think that this method of the storytelling, where we're just kind of plopped in the middle of a lot of events,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's exciting, and I think it just matches with the suspense genre that we're exploring for Marvel. So,
Definitely.
I think that's the big points. I can't wait until episode 2. I was so excited by the end of this episode, and then I'm like, damn it, just cuts it off. We're just done. Roll the credits. And so, yeah, those were the big points for me.
One last comment in the chats. They said Oscar is an excellent actor, and because of him, we are getting more and more interested into this character. And I agree, he is an awesome actor. And I kind of posted something earlier this week in terms of him almost kind of being portrayed in these like Egyptian roles. Even though he's Hispanic, and two, like I almost forgot that he played Apocalypse, in that X-Men Apocalypse movie, and now he's Moon Knight, and that aside, he has a really good track record. I've ever since seeing him, I think the first thing I've ever seen him in was this movie called Sucker Punch, and even in that he was a bad guy, but he was a really good bad guy. So I like once they kind of said that Oscar is coming into the MCU, I already kind of got a good idea of what we're gonna get. Like I knew it wasn't gonna be something unknown. I knew it was gonna be something that was gonna be worth watching. And I don't think the MCU, especially Kevin Feige, right now is at the stage of giving a huge character like Moon Knight to somebody new. I feel like we're gonna get more so newer actors when it comes down to, let's say, quote unquote teams, and like let's say like the Eternals, we got a few new faces there. But when it comes down to a solo show, they're going to invest in someone who has the charisma to make people want to continue to watch that show. So, Oscar Isaac, again, another S tier actor. I'm gonna keep saying S tier, and he's up there. So, I'm with that.
Absolutely. And I think, Marvel's earned the place to be that kind of exclusive with their casting,
Right.
right? And so it just means we're going to be getting a lot more talent into these awesome projects. I think he did
Yeah.
amazing. Just in the little bits, I mean, we fell in love with like Steven, so much empathy for them. He's like one of those characters, kind of like Bucky, where we just want to like protect,
Right.
from harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then even with Mark, I feel like that little glimpse of him at the very end, where he's like this protective, big brother to Steven, very cool, played by the same freaking actors,
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of range. I'm excited to see more of it. And
Definitely.
just kind of as we're on the note of like actors, big actors kind of joining the MCU, I don't know if you saw the thing from Madame Web, but Dakota Johnson is on the MCU, and so is Sydney
Hold
Sweeney.
on.
Have you
Let me
seen
look
that?
that up. Dakota Johnson.
She's the one from Fifty Shades of Grey.
I didn't watch 50 Shades of Grey.
You'll know her. You'll recognize the
Oh,
actress
the
even if
main
you
the
haven't
main
seen it.
woman. Okay, and
And then Sydney Sweeney is from Euphoria.
oh, I think I read about her,
Yes.
but honestly, I don't want to touch any of this, any of these topics, just because I'm seeing the reviews of Morbius, and right now, Sony, I'm listen, I'm gonna see it. I may see it this weekend. That may be the topic of next week. Grace and I will chat about it later.
Yeah.
But as far as what I'm reading, Sony is still being Sony, okay? And Sony just needs to just hand everybody over. They need to just do what Fox did, take the check, It'll be a nice check because Disney has money, but
They will do
they
it.
will do it. If it costs $1 trillion, I'm sure Disney will just be like, okay, we may lose $1 trillion, but we're about to make $1 trillion more with the characters you're about to give us. So at the end of the day,
Right.
uh, we're gonna wait and see what Sony does. But as far as the whole news of like Madam Web and all that, I'm just gonna hold off my excitement until I maybe even see the movie. First off, I need the trailer. Okay, so I'm that's my part. That's my piece.
Now I'm disappointed because like in me I'm just like, yes, Marvel is doing like a like doing Madame Web, we're going to be getting this character, and we're going to potentially be getting, I think, the ones who are like being, because I don't think it was announced who Sydney Sweeney was playing. I think people were on a vote of like, oh, is she going to play Black
Mm-hmm.
Cat? Is she going to be Gwen Stacy? But I'm now sad because I'm like, is it Sony running the show or is it a Marvel project? But then it's like the Spider Verse, so it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
Sorry to
we won't
ruin
go down
that.
that road.
Yeah. She
Guys, you are a witness. He just never lets me have these moments of excitement.
I want
Very
listen,
fair
and that's
though.
another thing. Like, I want to be excited. Okay, I for sure want to be excited about anything Spider-Man related. Okay, but as of right now, Sony is going to hold on to everything Spider-Man related. You
Yeah.
know, so we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anywho. I was over here trying to leave this on a solid note, and then we gotta end
I'm
with
sorry.
this.
I'm sorry. Well, listen, hold on.
Now you're
Here's
cool.
listen. When we before we leave, I just wanted to mention that I finally finished. It took some time because I kept stopping and going, but I finally finished the graphic novel of the Eternals, and it
Very
is
cool.
100% better than movies. That's all I gotta say. Oh man, as far as listen, if whoever directed the Eternals or whoever wrote the movie The Eternals, I don't want to put it on the director. Whoever wrote it, if they just followed suit of the same storyline, because we got two different storylines. Like the movie is completely different from the book, which is weird because normally people follow the book verbatim and they may switch something here or there, but the movie was like totally on the opposite end of the spectrum. So, um, just in reading it, I may become I may become a Grace and just start getting more and more into these books. You
Can
know what
I
I'm
just
saying?
say, can I just say, when I saw the post that you bought the comic book, I was like, this is literally what I was talking about. Either because you have no idea what the heck just happened, or you don't know who this character is, or what this storyline is, or you just hate it so much that you want to read something to prove you hate it more. You're gonna go and pick up a comic,
Mm-hmm.
or open up the browser, search something, get deeper into something, find out something more, and you know something. In 5 years, when we see the Eternals come back on the screen, you're gonna catch 1,000 Easter eggs. People are not gonna
Yep.
notice. Grace ain't gonna
Mm-hmm.
notice, and you're gonna be like, I caught that. I got that. I know what this is, and that is your reward, and that is the fandom.
I just wish,
I am so
if
content.
anything, I just hope that Feige just is like, hey, we have another Eternals in the works. It's actually an alternate universe, and this is the universe that's attached to.
Me too.
This is the one attached to the MCU. So we're gonna change up the
Yeah.
actors, and we're actually gonna follow suit of the actual stories, and yeah, we're gonna give that to you. But that's just me
I'm
hoping and
excited.
dreaming, you know.
He is me now with
Yep.
hopes and
Yep.
dreams,
Yep.
and oh,
Yep.
I love
Yep.
it. Well, I saw the one that you posted that you read. I have to look back at the notes I did for Eternals, because I know there were several things that were pulled from many different
Mhm.
storylines, you know,
Mhm.
and usually like Marvel kind of hits it out of the ballpark in terms of how they weave these stories
Yeah.
together. And Eternals was one of them that, for many reasons, and we've kind of I almost want to do like another discussion of everything Eternals did
Mhm.
wrong, because I think we agree on a lot of the areas we think that's the case. You know, I feel like it's a fun thing to look at, but um I lost my train of thought. Well, anyways, they didn't do it right, but maybe next time if they visit it around, they hear the calls of the fans,
Yes.
they hear all of these things, and not just that, but also for future characters as to why did this flop
Mhm.
and not do as good as it should have.
Right.
Um, and one of those examples being like how to introduce a character like Moon Knight that many don't have attachments to.
Mhm.
It's like a slow build before you throw him on with the rest of the team and stuff.
You
But
just gotta,
I'm so
if anything,
happy.
just for us to love it, put it in a show just so it can make more sense.
That too.
Don't make a movie just yet. But yeah, I think we're gonna
So
end
many things.
with that. Where are we at? We're at 2:19. You know what I'm saying? This may be up there as far as top streams as far
Why
as
don't
length. You know what I'm
we?
saying?
You know what we're doing? We're doing what comic book movies are doing, where it was like, oh wow, a 2.5, 4 hour, almost 3 hour movie is outlandish, and now that's becoming the average. I feel like that's what we're doing. Before it was like an hour was our run, and we built an hour and a half, and now we're just like keeping it like 2 hour plus is our
They just
standard.
released the runtime of Doctor Strange. Isn't that around the 2.5 hour mark too?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I feel like that's now the standard. I'm making a comparison. I'm not mad about
Yeah.
it, you know? I just think that's funny. Yeah, this is up there, I think, with our runs. But yeah, I think do you have anything else
No,
chill?
I think our boy Jesse said the Moon Knight segment was great today. DMZ, I don't know because I haven't seen it. Well, if you ever have a chance, it's only 4 episodes, and it's a good story. You know, you can hear it in our voice and the way we talked about it earlier that we enjoyed it. It was a good 4 part series. You know, so uh, happy Friday to you all. Thank you all for viewing, and I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Grace, you enjoy your weekend, and yeah, we will catch you all next Friday. All right.
Likewise. Thank you guys. We'll see you guys next
All right.
time.
Later, guys.